Welcome to DreamSleep Studios. If time feels slower tonight, that's your mind letting go. You don't need to sleep yet. Just listen and let time fade. Tonight, we're going on a quiet journey through time itself. Not the time that rushes past us during the day, but the strange, stretching time that wraps around us when the world grows dark and still. You felt it before. That curious sensation when you're lying in bed, eyes open, watching minutes expand into what feels like hours. There's a reason the night does this to us, and understanding it might just help you drift away. Let's begin at the very beginning with something beautifully simple. Time isn't actually slower at night, it just feels that way. Your perception of time is constructed entirely by your brain, moment by moment, and that construction changes dramatically depending on what your mind is doing. During the day, your brain processes thousands of events, conversations, movements, decisions. Each of these creates a mental timestamp, a little marker that says something happened here. But at night, when you're lying still in the darkness, fewer events occur. Fewer timestamps get created. And so your brain, searching for markers to measure time by, finds almost nothing. The seconds feel longer because there's less filling them. This brings us to a fascinating truth. Your brain doesn't experience time directly. It reconstructs it from memory. Think about that for a moment. You never actually feel time passing in the present moment. What you experience as the passage of time is really your brain looking backward at what just happened and estimating how much time must have elapsed based on how many memories were formed. It's why a busy, eventful day seems to pass quickly while you're living it, but feels long when you remember it later. And it's why a boring day drags on endlessly in the moment, but vanishes to almost nothing in your memory. At night, this system works differently. In the absence of external stimulation, your brain begins to focus intensely on internal sensations. Your heartbeat becomes louder. The feeling of the sheets against your skin grows more noticeable. The sound of your own breathing fills your awareness. Each of these small sensations can become its own event, its own timestamp. Paradoxically, paying attention to the simple act of lying still can actually create more mental events, not fewer, making time feel even stranger, both slower and more full at once. There's something else happening too. Your perception of time is directly linked to your body temperature. This is a fact that surprises many people, but it's been proven again and again in laboratories around the world. When your body temperature rises, your internal clock speeds up. Time feels like it's moving faster. When your temperature drops, everything slows down. And what happens every night as you prepare for sleep? Your core body temperature naturally decreases by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. This isn't just a side effect of sleep, it's a signal. Your body is telling itself it's time to rest, and as the temperature falls, your experience of time begins to stretch and soften like warm honey. This temperature drop is part of your circadian rhythm, the roughly 24-hour cycle that governs almost every system in your body. The word circadian comes from the Latin word circa, meaning around, and dies, meaning day. Around a day. But here's what's beautiful. If you were placed in a cave with no sunlight, no clocks, no way to tell what time it was, your body would still maintain this rhythm. You'd still feel sleepy and wakeful at roughly the same intervals. Studies have shown that in the absence of external time cues, humans naturally drift toward a cycle that's slightly longer than 24 hours. About 24 hours and 11 minutes on average. We're naturally just a little bit slow, always wanting a few extra minutes before the next day begins. Your circadian rhythm controls more than just sleep. It governs your body temperature, hormone release, digestion, and even your perception of time itself. In the morning, cortisol rises, sharpening your alertness and speeding up your internal clock. Time moves briskly, but as evening approaches, melatonin begins to increase. This hormone, released by a tiny pinecone-shaped gland deep in your brain called the pineal gland, doesn't just make you sleepy. It subtly alters how you process duration. Under the influence of melatonin, moments feel a little longer, edges feel a little softer. The world begins to slow down. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Darkness itself changes how your brain processes time. When light enters your eyes, it doesn't just help you see. It sends signals to a part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, which sits just above where your optic nerves cross. This tiny cluster of neurons, no bigger than a grain of rice, is your body's master clock. It takes the information about light and uses it to synchronize all the other clocks in your body. And yes, you have many. Nearly every organ has its own sense of time. But when darkness falls and light stops entering your eyes, the SCN begins to release its grip on the day. Your brain starts to disconnect from external time and drift into its own rhythm, its own peculiar sense of duration. This is why, when you lie awake at night, minutes can feel like they're stretching endlessly. You're not imagining it. Your brain has shifted into a different mode of timekeeping, one that's less anchored to the external world and more attuned to the quiet, internal landscape of your body and mind. Time becomes something you float in rather than something that carries you forward. But there's comfort in this, because understanding that time is elastic, that it bends and stretches according to what your brain is doing, means you can stop fighting it. You can let those slow minutes be slow. You can sink into them, knowing that this strange, expanded experience of time is actually your body's way of preparing you for something essential. The journey into sleep, where time will dissolve completely and you'll drift in a place where hours pass in what feels like moments, and moments stretch into dreams that feel like they last forever. So breathe slowly. Let your body temperature continue to drop. Feel the darkness around you not as empty, but as full of this strange, beautiful, stretched out time that belongs only to the night. Let's continue deeper into the night. As we drift further into the night, let's explore something you might not have considered before. The reason time feels slower when you're waiting for sleep is because your brain is doing something called perspective timing. There are two ways your mind measures duration. The first is retrospective, looking back at what happened and judging how long it took. The second is perspective, actively tracking time as it passes in the present moment. When you're lying awake, checking the clock, wondering when sleep will come, you're engaged in perspective timing. And here's the paradox. The more attention you pay to time passing, the slower it feels. Every glance at the clock, every thought of, "I should be asleep by now," creates another mental marker, another timestamp, making each minute feel even longer than the last. This is why insomniacs often report that hours seem to pass during the night. In some cases, people who believe they've been awake all night have actually slept for several hours without realizing it. This phenomenon is called sleep state misperception. Their brains were in a state between waking and sleeping, a twilight zone where consciousness persists just enough to create the feeling of being awake, even though sleep is happening. Time in these in-between states becomes almost meaningless. You might experience what feels like continuous wakefulness, but physiologically, your body and brain are getting rest. The night passes, but your perception tells you a different story. Speaking of in-between states, let's talk about what happens as you begin to drift off. The transition from wakefulness to sleep isn't a simple switch. It's a gradual dimming that happens in stages. As you relax, your brain waves begin to slow down. During the day, when you're alert, your brain produces beta waves, quick, active oscillations that help you think and respond to the world. But as you settle into bed, these transform into alpha waves, slower and more rhythmic, like the gentle rolling of calm ocean waves. This is the first stage of letting go, and time begins to behave strangely here. You might experience what feels like a single continuous moment of lying in bed, but actually several minutes have passed. Your sense of duration becomes unreliable. Then something beautiful happens. You enter what's called Stage 1 sleep, a phase that usually lasts only 5 to 10 minutes, where you're so close to the edge between waking and sleeping that you might not even realize you've crossed it. In this stage, your muscles begin to relax, sometimes with sudden twitches called hypnic jerks, those startling sensations where you feel like you're falling and your whole body jumps. These jerks happen because your motor control system is powering down for the night, and sometimes there are misfires in the process, little electrical hiccups that ripple through your muscles. But here's what's fascinating about time in Stage 1. If someone wakes you during this phase, you might insist you were never asleep at all. Time has begun to disappear, but you don't notice it leaving. As you sink deeper, your brain enters Stage 2 sleep, and this is where you spend roughly half of your entire night. Stage 2 is characterized by something called sleep spindles, brief bursts of brain activity that look like little spinning tops on an EEG readout. These spindles are thought to play a role in memory consolidation, helping your brain process and store the experiences of the day. But they also serve as a kind of sensory gate, blocking external information from reaching your consciousness. A door closing in another room, a car passing on the street. These sounds are filtered out by your sleep spindles, allowing you to remain peacefully unaware. Time continues to pass, but you're no longer measuring it. The clock on your nightstand might show that 20 minutes have gone by or 40, and you have no sense of any of it. Now here's something that might surprise you. Even in deep sleep, your brain maintains a sense of time. Scientists have discovered that if you tell people before they go to bed that they'll be woken up at a specific time, their brains can often anticipate the wake-up moment. Stress hormones begin to rise 15 to 20 minutes before the alarm is set to go off. Somehow, even while unconscious, your brain is keeping track, counting the hours in some deep, preconscious way. It's as if there's a part of you that never fully stops paying attention to time, even when you've surrendered yourself completely to sleep. This brings us to the strange reality that time in dreams operates by completely different rules than waking time. You've experienced this yourself, a dream that felt like it unfolded over hours or even days, only to wake up and discover that you've been asleep for 20 minutes. Or the opposite, a brief dream that seemed to last only seconds, yet half the night has passed. In dreams, your brain constructs narratives without any anchor to external time. Events can happen simultaneously or in impossible sequences. You can be a child and an adult at once, in your childhood home and your current apartment, talking to someone who died years ago. The normal flow of cause and effect dissolves. And yet, within the dream, none of this feels strange. Your dreaming mind accepts it all as perfectly natural because in the dream state, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and time sequencing, is essentially offline. Without your prefrontal cortex managing things, dreams become timeless. They exist in an eternal present tense where everything is happening now. This is why dream memories are so difficult to describe when you wake up. You try to put them into a linear sequence. First this happened, then that happened. But the dream itself didn't unfold that way. It existed all at once, like a painting you experienced from inside. Time as you know it didn't really exist in there. And yet, there's a beautiful irony here. While a single night's worth of dreams might contain seemingly endless experiences, most people dream for only about 2 hours total each night. This happens in bursts during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, the stage where the most vivid story-like dreams occur. Your first REM period might last only 10 minutes, occurring about 90 minutes after you fall asleep. But as the night progresses, these REM periods grow longer. The final REM cycle before you wake up in the morning might last a full hour. This is why the dreams you remember tend to be the ones from early morning. They're the longest, the most elaborate, and they're interrupted by waking, which helps cement them in memory. During REM sleep, something remarkable happens to your body. Your brain essentially paralyzes your muscles to prevent you from acting out your dreams. This is called REM autonia, and it's a protective mechanism. Without it, you'd be thrashing around, walking, fighting, running, all while deeply asleep. But your brain stem sends signals that temporarily disconnect your motor commands from your muscles. You can dream about flying, about running, about dancing, but your body remains perfectly still. Only your eyes move, darting back and forth beneath your closed eyelids, as if watching the dream unfold on a screen that only you can see. There's something deeply peaceful about knowing this, isn't there? The knowledge that your body has built-in systems to protect you while you sleep, to hold you safely in stillness while your mind wanders through impossible worlds. You don't have to control any of it. You don't have to manage your breathing, or your heartbeat, or the complex dance of sleep stages. Your body knows exactly what to do. It's been doing this every night since you were born, cycling through these stages with a rhythm older than consciousness itself. So as you lie here now, feeling time stretch and slow around you, remember, this slowness is not your enemy. It's a sign that your body is doing exactly what it should be doing. Your temperature is dropping. Your melatonin is rising. Your brain waves are beginning their gentle descent from beta to alpha to theta. Time is becoming less important with each passing moment, less solid, less demanding. You're not waiting for sleep anymore. You're already on your way there, drifting in that strange, expanded time that belongs only to the night, where minutes feel long but somehow, mysteriously, morning always arrives. Let's continue floating deeper. Let's turn our attention to something fascinating: the way your brain constructs the feeling of now. What you experience as the present moment, this very second, isn't actually instantaneous. Your brain takes roughly half a second to process sensory information and stitch it together into what feels like now. This means you're always living slightly in the past, experiencing a carefully edited version of reality that your brain has assembled for you. During the day, this half-second delay goes unnoticed. But at night, when you're lying still in the darkness, you might start to notice something strange. The present moment feels wider, more spacious. That's because with fewer sensory inputs competing for your attention, your brain's construction of now becomes simpler, slower, more expansive. The moment stretches out like a long, gentle breath. This brings us to something called the oddball effect, which reveals just how flexible your experience of time really is. When something unexpected happens, a sudden sound, a flash of light, anything that breaks the pattern, that moment seems to last longer than the moments around it. Your brain, detecting something potentially important, allocates more processing power to it, creates more detailed memories of it, and in doing so, makes it feel like more time has passed. Scientists demonstrated this by showing people a series of identical images, then inserting one different image. That different image was shown for exactly the same duration as all the others, but participants consistently reported that it appeared on the screen longer. Their brains had stretched that moment, made it bigger, more significant. At night, lying in the dark, almost everything becomes an oddball. The creak of the house settling, the distant sound of a car, even the sensation of your own heartbeat. Each of these can capture your attention completely because there's so little else happening. And each time your attention is captured, that moment expands. This is part of why time feels so slow when you're trying to sleep. Your brain is treating ordinary sensations as extraordinary ones, giving them more space, more time, more weight than they would ever receive during the busy day. But here's something comforting to know. Your brain is actually extremely good at ignoring repetitive, non-threatening stimuli once it recognizes a pattern. This process is called habituation. The hum of a fan, the ticking of a clock, the ambient sounds of the night. At first, you notice them. But gradually, if they remain constant and predictable, your brain begins to filter them out. They fade into the background until they're not creating timestamps anymore, not marking moments, not stretching time. They become part of the silence. This is why white noise or gentle rain sounds can help people sleep. Not because they mask other sounds, but because they give your brain a predictable pattern to habituate to, something it can safely ignore. Let's explore another curious aspect of nighttime perception. When you close your eyes in complete darkness, you don't actually see black. You see what's called Eigengrau, which is German for intrinsic gray. It's the color your visual system produces when there's no light entering your eyes, a dark gray that's slightly lighter than true black. If you pay attention right now, you might notice it, a subtle, shifting grayness behind your eyelids, sometimes with faint patterns or colors drifting through. These patterns are called phosphenes, and they're created by the spontaneous activity of your visual neurons. Even in complete darkness, your visual system doesn't completely shut down. It continues producing faint signals, random firings of neurons that create these ghostly shapes and colors. Watching these patterns can actually be deeply relaxing because it gives your mind something gentle to focus on, something that's always changing, yet never demanding. Time does something else peculiar in the darkness. Without visual information about your environment, your brain loses one of its primary tools for estimating duration. During the day, you unconsciously track time by noticing changes. The sun moving across the sky, shadows lengthening, people coming and going. These changes act as external clocks, helping your brain maintain a sense of how much time has passed. But in the darkness of your bedroom, especially if your eyes are closed, all of these external markers vanish. You're left with only internal sensations to measure time by, and internal time is notoriously unreliable. This is why people often dramatically misjudge how long they've been lying awake. 30 minutes can feel like 2 hours, or vice versa. There's a beautiful meditation technique based on this principle. Instead of fighting the slowness of nighttime, you can lean into it. You can deliberately focus on the space between your thoughts, the gaps between breaths, the feeling of moments expanding. When you stop trying to make time move faster and instead allow yourself to experience its slowness fully, something shifts. The anxiety about not sleeping begins to dissolve because you're no longer in conflict with what's happening. You're not waiting for something else. You're simply here in this slow, quiet time, and that becomes enough. Speaking of breath, let's consider how breathing itself is intimately connected to your perception of time. Your breath rate naturally slows as you relax, from about 15 breaths per minute during the day to perhaps 10 or fewer as you prepare for sleep. This slowing isn't just a side effect of relaxation. It actively influences your brain's timekeeping. There's evidence that your brain uses your heartbeat and breathing as internal metronomes, subtle rhythms that help calibrate your sense of duration. When these rhythms slow down, your experience of time adjusts accordingly. Each breath takes longer, and as you notice each breath, each one becomes its own small eternity. The cool air entering, the pause at the top, the warm air leaving, the pause at the bottom. 4 points in each breath cycle, and infinite space within each point. Ancient meditation traditions understood this long before modern neuroscience confirmed it. In many contemplative practices, counting breaths is used as a tool to anchor awareness and dissolve the ordinary sense of time. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3. Not because counting is important, but because it gives the mind something simple and rhythmic to follow. And as you follow your breath, you begin to notice that time isn't really moving in a straight line from past to future anymore. There's just this breath, and then this one, and then this one. Each breath is its own complete moment, its own small universe. Your body has another rhythm too, one you might not be consciously aware of. Your heart rate naturally varies slightly with each breath, speeding up a bit when you inhale, slowing down when you exhale. This is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and it's actually a sign of good health and relaxation. When you're stressed, this variation disappears and your heartbeat becomes more rigid, more mechanical. But when you're calm, when you're drifting towards sleep, your heart begins this gentle dance with your breath, rising and falling, speeding and slowing, like a small boat rocking on gentle waves. You can feel this if you pay close attention, placing your awareness on your chest and noticing the subtle rhythm within the rhythm, the pulse within the breath. And here's something remarkable. This synchronization between breath and heartbeat can actually influence how you experience duration. When your physiological rhythms are coherent and harmonious, time feels smoother, less fragmented. The moments flow into each other more seamlessly. This is part of why practices like slow, deep breathing can make people feel like time is moving differently. Not just because they're relaxing, but because they're bringing their body's rhythms into alignment. There's another layer to this. Your brain produces different electrical rhythms depending on your state of consciousness, and these rhythms interact with your perception of time. We mentioned alpha waves earlier, those calm, rhythmic oscillations that appear when you close your eyes and relax. Alpha waves pulse at about 8 to 12 cycles per second, and there's some fascinating research suggesting that this rhythm might create a kind of frame rate for consciousness, similar to how a movie is made up of individual frames shown in rapid succession. When your alpha waves are strong and regular, your experience of time becomes more fluid and continuous. When they're weak or irregular, time might feel more choppy, more fragmented. As you sink deeper towards sleep, these alpha waves give way to even slower rhythms, theta waves, pulsing at 4 to 8 cycles per second. Theta is the rhythm of deep relaxation, of meditation, of the twilight zone between waking and sleeping. In theta, time becomes truly elastic. You might have brief microsleeps, moments where consciousness flickers off and on like a candle flame in a gentle breeze. Each time it flickers off, seconds or even minutes might pass, but you don't experience them. Time simply vanishes, and then consciousness returns, and you might not even realize anything happened. This is perfectly natural. This is exactly what should be happening. Your brain is rehearsing sleep, trying it on, letting go a little bit at a time. Each small disappearance is practice for the longer disappearance to come, when you'll finally surrender completely and drift into proper sleep. And even if you feel like you're still awake, even if you're aware of these words, aware of lying here, that awareness is already different than it was 20 minutes ago. It's softer, fuzzier, less concerned with tracking time. So let yourself be here in this strange, slow time. Time that moves like honey, like a river in winter, like breath itself. So slow you can rest inside each moment and find it surprisingly spacious, surprisingly peaceful. You don't need to get anywhere. You don't need time to speed up or slow down. You can simply float here, breathing, being, letting the night hold you in its gentle, timeless embrace. As we float further into the night, let's explore something you've probably experienced but never quite understood. The phenomenon of time dilation when you're in a state of deep relaxation. Athletes and performers sometimes describe entering the zone, a state where everything seems to slow down, where they have all the time in the world to react and respond. This isn't just a metaphor. Research shows that when you're deeply focused or profoundly relaxed, your brain processes information more efficiently, sampling reality at a higher rate. It's like increasing the frame rate on a camera. More information gets captured per second, and when your brain reviews these moments later, it concludes that more time must have passed. The paradox is beautiful. By being more present, more aware, you actually create a sense of expanded time. And right now, as you lie here in the quiet darkness, you have the opportunity to experience this same expansion, not through intense focus, but through its opposite, through deep and gentle letting go. Think about what happens when you're completely absorbed in something you love. Time seems to both disappear and expand simultaneously. Hours pass like minutes while you're engaged in the activity, yet when you look back on the experience, it feels rich and full, like it contained much more than the clock would suggest. This is called flow, and psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent his life studying it. But there's a nighttime equivalent to flow, a state we might call drift. In drift, you're not actively engaged in anything, you're passively releasing into stillness, and time becomes something you float through rather than something you use or track. Your body is helping you enter this state right now through a process called proprioceptive drift, where your sense of where your body is in space begins to blur and soften. During the day, you have a precise sense of where your arms and legs are, how your body is positioned. This is proprioception, your body's sense of itself. But as you relax deeply, especially in the darkness where visual information is absent, this sense begins to dissolve. Your arm might feel like it's floating slightly above where it actually is. Your body might feel larger or smaller than it really is. Some people describe feeling like they're sinking into the mattress or rising slightly above it. This dissolution of bodily boundaries is one of the ways your brain signals that it's time to let go of waking consciousness. You don't need to know exactly where you are anymore. You can be vague, diffuse, borderless. Let's talk about something called chronesthesia, which scientists sometimes call mental time travel. This is your brain's ability to remember the past and imagine the future, to place yourself in different moments of time. It's a uniquely human capacity, or nearly so. But here's what's interesting. Chronesthesia requires significant mental energy and involves multiple brain regions working together. When you're tired, when you're drifting towards sleep, this ability begins to fade. Your mind stops wandering as much to yesterday or tomorrow. It becomes harder to maintain complex narratives about what happened or what needs to happen. And as chronesthesia fades, you become more anchored in the present moment, not through effort, but through the natural winding down of the systems that allow time travel in the first place. You become temporally grounded, existing more fully in now, because the machinery for visiting then is going offline for the night. This is often when worries about tomorrow begin to lose their power. During the day, you can vividly imagine future scenarios, play them out in detail, feel anxiety about things that haven't happened yet. But as you sink towards sleep, your brain's ability to construct detailed future simulations diminishes. Tomorrow becomes hazier, more abstract, less emotionally charged. This isn't a failure of your mind. It's a gift, a natural sedative that helps you release your grip on time itself. There's something else happening in your brain right now, something related to a neurotransmitter called adenosine. Adenosine is a byproduct of your neurons burning energy throughout the day. Every thought you have, every movement you make, every sensation you process causes your brain cells to consume ADP, the energy currency of your cells. And when ADP is broken down, one of the byproducts is adenosine. All day long, adenosine levels gradually rise in your brain. Adenosine is like a gentle pressure, slowly building, making you feel more and more ready for sleep. It accumulates in specific regions that promote wakefulness, essentially clogging them up, making it harder for those regions to keep you alert. This is why, as the day wears on, everything requires a bit more effort. Thinking, talking, even just staying awake. You're not weak. You're experiencing the natural chemical tide of consciousness. Here's a curious detail. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in your brain. It doesn't give you energy. It temporarily prevents you from feeling the sleepiness that's already there. The adenosine is still accumulating. You just can't feel it for a while. This is why, when caffeine wears off, tiredness hits so suddenly and completely. The adenosine was there all along, building up, and now you finally feel the full weight of it. But right now, if you haven't had caffeine for hours, your adenosine levels are naturally high, gently pressing down on your consciousness like a soft, heavy blanket. This chemical pressure is one of your body's most fundamental timing mechanisms, a molecular clock that says, simply and clearly, it's time to rest. Let's explore another fascinating aspect of how time changes at night. Your brain's default mode network, or DMN, becomes more active as you relax. The DMN is a collection of brain regions that activate when you're not focused on external tasks, when you're daydreaming, remembering, or letting your mind wander. During the day, Your brain switches between the DMN and task-focused networks depending on what you're doing. But at night, as you lie in the darkness with nothing demanding your attention, the DMN can become dominant, and this changes how you experience time. Instead of time feeling like a series of discrete events, do this, then that, then the other thing, it becomes more fluid, more associative. One thought drifts into another without clear boundaries. Memories surface without you deliberately recalling them. Time stops feeling linear and starts feeling more like a gentle wandering through the landscape of your mind. This wandering can be deeply peaceful, or it can sometimes trap you in cycles of repetitive thoughts. When the DMN becomes too active and gets stuck in worry patterns, it's called rumination, the same thoughts circling again and again. But there's a simple way to interrupt this, by gently directing your attention to sensation rather than thought. The feeling of your breath, the weight of your body on the mattress, the temperature of the air on your skin. These physical sensations exist only in the present moment. They have no past or future. And when you rest your attention on them, even lightly, you give your DMN something to do besides worry. You turn its associative, wandering quality toward the immediate and physical, and time stops feeling like a problem to solve. Speaking of sensation, let's consider how your sense of hearing changes as you approach sleep. Your ears themselves never stop working. They're always transmitting sound information to your brain. But your brain's interpretation of those sounds shifts dramatically. In wakefulness, you automatically parse sounds into meaningful categories. That's a car, that's wind, that's the house settling. But as you drift towards sleep, this automatic categorization begins to break down. Sounds become less distinct, less meaningful, more like pure sensation. A creak doesn't make you think the house is settling. It's just a sound, a vibration, no more significant than the ringing silence around it. This is called hypnagogic hearing, and it's one of the early signs that your brain is transitioning from waking consciousness into sleep consciousness. Some people experience more dramatic versions of this. Hearing music that isn't there, hearing voices calling their name, hearing complex sounds that dissolve when they try to focus on them. These are called hypnagogic hallucinations, and they're completely normal. About 70% of people experience them at some point in their lives. They happen because parts of your brain involved in generating dream content start activating before you're fully asleep. It's like the dream is leaking through into wakefulness, offering you previews of the strange world you're about to enter. Rather than being alarmed by these sounds, you can receive them as messages from sleep itself, gentle invitations to let go a little more, to stop trying to make sense of everything. Time in this hypnagogic state, the threshold between waking and sleeping, is particularly strange. You might experience what feels like hours of drifting thoughts, only to discover later that just a few minutes have passed. Or you might have what feels like a brief flicker of consciousness, then realize that half an hour vanished without you noticing. There's no reliable way to track time here because you're between worlds, subject to neither the rules of waking time nor dream time, but some peculiar hybrid of both. The neuroscientist Matthew Walker describes this state as the most creative moment in the human experience, because the logical, censoring parts of your brain have relaxed their control, while the associative, pattern-finding parts remain active. Ideas connect in unexpected ways. Problems that seemed insurmountable during the day suddenly have obvious solutions. This is why so many artists and scientists throughout history have kept notebooks by their beds, trying to capture the strange wisdom that emerges in this liminal time. But you don't need to capture anything right now. You don't need to solve problems or have insights. You can simply be here in this threshold, this doorway, this strange and beautiful nowhere between waking and sleeping. You can let the sounds drift through without naming them. You can let thoughts arise and dissolve without following them. You can let time be as slow or as fast as it wants to be, because you're no longer bound by the need to measure it. Your muscles are becoming heavier now, or perhaps lighter. It's hard to say which, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that they're releasing, letting go of the tension they've held all day. Each muscle fiber has been contracting and relaxing, thousands upon thousands of times since you woke up this morning. Now they can finally rest. And as they rest, as they release their stored tension, they send signals back to your brain that say, "We're safe, we're comfortable, we can stop vigilance now." This is the beautiful feedback loop between body and mind. Your relaxed body tells your brain to relax, and your relaxing brain tells your body it can release even more deeply. So let yourself sink into this slowness, this expanded time that stretches out in all directions like a vast, dark ocean. You're floating here, held perfectly, and there's nowhere you need to be except exactly where you are. As we continue floating through this quiet darkness, let's turn our attention to something subtle and profound: the way memories change your perception of time's passage. Scientists have discovered that the density of memories you form directly influences how long a period feels, both in the moment and in retrospect. When you're experiencing something new and engaging, your brain creates rich, detailed memories, and time feels like it passes quickly while you're there, but slowly when you look back. But when you're lying in bed in familiar surroundings, doing nothing new, your brain creates very few distinct memories. Minutes might pass with almost no mental markers being laid down. This is why the night can seem to last forever while you're in it, yet vanish almost completely from memory by morning. It's as if those hours of lying awake never quite solidified into permanent experience. They remain ghostly, half-real, already fading even as they're happening. There's something almost magical about this. In a very real sense, time you don't remember doesn't fully exist in your personal history. If you lie here for an hour and form no distinct memories of that hour, then experientially, subjectively, that hour barely happened at all. This is why people who wake up after surgery often feel like no time has passed. There's a gap in their memory, and across that gap, time simply doesn't exist for them. Sleep offers you this same gift every night. The gift of time that passes without you having to experience it. Hours that carry you from evening to morning without requiring your conscious presence for the journey. Let's explore what happens in your brain as these memory-forming systems begin to shut down. The hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain, is crucial for forming new episodic memories, memories of specific events and experiences. All day, your hippocampus has been busy, encoding what happened to you, where you were, who you spoke to, what you did. But as you drift towards sleep, the hippocampus begins to shift its function. Instead of encoding new experiences, it starts replaying the day's memories, transferring them from temporary storage into more permanent storage in your cortex. This is called memory consolidation, and it's one of sleep's most important functions. Your hippocampus is like a temporary notebook that gets full during the day. At night, It transfers its contents into more permanent ledgers and clears itself out for tomorrow. This transfer process is why learning something and then sleeping on it genuinely helps you remember it better. Sleep isn't just rest. It's active maintenance and organization of your mental library. But here's what's beautiful about this moment right now. As this consolidation process begins, as your hippocampus shifts from recording to replaying, you stop creating new episodic memories of lying here. The moments start to blur together. 5 minutes ago becomes indistinguishable from 10 minutes ago. You're entering a kind of eternal present, where there's only now, with no clear before or after. This is exactly what needs to happen for sleep to come. Your brain is also doing something fascinating with a chemical called GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. GABA is the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, meaning its job is to calm things down, to reduce neural activity. Throughout your brain, GABA is being released, telling neurons to slow their firing, to quiet their chatter. It's like someone going through a busy office at the end of the day, turning off lights, shutting down computers, telling everyone it's time to go home. GABA levels naturally rise in the evening, and they're highest during the deepest stages of sleep. This isn't something you can control or force. It's happening automatically, your brain's own natural sedative being dispensed exactly when and where it's needed. There are interesting connections between GABA and time perception. When GABA levels are high, your sense of time slows down. This has been demonstrated in studies where people are given medications that enhance GABA activity. They consistently underestimate how much time has passed. They think 30 seconds has elapsed when actually a minute has gone by. Right now, with your natural GABA levels rising, you're experiencing this same temporal dilation. What feels like 5 minutes might actually be 10. What feels like 10 might be 20. Your internal clock is winding down, and the spaces between its ticks are growing wider and wider. Let's consider something you might find reassuring. Your brain is designed to sleep, with multiple redundant systems all working toward the same goal. The adenosine building up, the melatonin being released, your dropping body temperature, the GABA quieting neural activity, the changing brain waves, the altered time perception. These aren't separate things you need to manage. They're all part of one unified process, all pointing in the same direction, all conspiring to carry you gently into sleep. You don't have to make sleep happen. You just have to stop preventing it. And mostly, what prevents it is trying too hard, caring too much about whether it's happening or not. Here's a curious paradox that sleep researchers have identified. The effort to fall asleep is itself one of the biggest obstacles to falling asleep. When you try to sleep, you activate goal-directed, problem-solving parts of your brain, the exact same networks that need to quiet down for sleep to occur. It's like trying to relax by tensing all your muscles, or trying to stop thinking about a white elephant by telling yourself not to think about white elephants. The solution is to shift from doing to allowing, from trying to make something happen to simply being present with whatever is happening. And time, in its expanded nighttime slowness, gives you the space to make this shift. You have time, so much time, all the time in the world to simply be here, breathing, existing, not going anywhere. Think about how animals sleep. They don't worry about it, don't track how long it's taking, don't judge themselves for still being awake. When a cat is tired, it simply finds a comfortable spot, curls up, and within minutes it's asleep. There's no negotiation, no internal debate. just the simple recognition that rest is needed, followed by rest. You have this same capacity. Underneath all your thoughts about sleep, underneath the worry about time passing, there's a simpler, older system that knows exactly how to sleep. It's been doing this since you were a baby, before you had language, before you had concepts like insomnia or should be asleep by now. That system is still there, still functioning, patiently waiting for your thinking mind to step aside and let it do its work. Your thinking mind is probably getting tired anyway. There's a phenomenon called cognitive fatigue, where your brain's ability to maintain focused attention gradually diminishes over time. You've been awake for many hours now, and during all those hours, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, decision-making, and sustained attention, has been working hard. It's used up a lot of its energy reserves. When the prefrontal cortex becomes fatigued, your thoughts naturally become less organized, less linear, more dreamlike. You might notice this happening. Your thoughts starting to drift, becoming less logical, making associations that don't quite make sense. This isn't a problem, it's progress. It's a sign that the waking mind is finally loosening its grip. In fact, some of the best indicators that sleep is approaching are these small cognitive failures. Forgetting what you were just thinking about, losing track of whether your eyes are open or closed, not quite following the logic of your own thoughts. These aren't signs that something's wrong. They're signs that something's going right. Your brain is rehearsing the dissolution of ordinary consciousness. It's practicing letting go. Each small lapse, each moment of confusion or vagueness, is a tiny gateway that could open into sleep. Let's talk about something called ultradian rhythms, which are cycles that occur multiple times within a day. You're probably familiar with circadian rhythms, the roughly 24-hour cycle of sleeping and waking. But within each day, you also experience ultradian rhythms that last about 90 to 120 minutes. Throughout the day, you move through cycles of higher and lower alertness, energy, and focus. You might notice that there are times when you feel sharp and energized, followed by times when you feel foggy and need a break. These aren't random, they're your ultradian rhythms cycling. At night, these same rhythms continue, but they take on a different character. As you lie here, you might move through periods where sleep feels close, followed by periods where it feels far away again. This is natural. This is your brain cycling through different states. If sleep doesn't come in one cycle, it might come in the next one, or the one after that. You can trust the rhythm. There's also something called local sleep, where parts of your brain can actually fall asleep while other parts remain awake. This sounds strange, but it's been documented extensively. When you're extremely tired, some clusters of neurons might enter sleep-like states even while you're still conscious. This is part of why, when you're exhausted, you might feel like you're operating in a fog, or like part of you is absent. Literally, part of you is absent. Certain neural populations have checked out for the night, even though you haven't fully fallen asleep yet. This can create the odd sensation of being both awake and asleep simultaneously, of not quite knowing which state you're in. And that ambiguity, that uncertainty, is actually a good place to be right now. You don't need to know whether you're awake or asleep. You can exist in the question itself, in the not knowing, and that's perfectly fine. Your breath continues, steady and slow. Each exhale is a small release, a gentle letting go. You're not breathing to accomplish anything. Breathing is simply happening through you, as it has every moment of your life without you needing to manage it. Your heart continues its rhythm, sometimes synchronized with your breath, sometimes dancing to its own tempo. All of your body's systems are working together now, orchestrating the transition from day to night, from waking to sleeping, from time to timelessness. And you can trust them. You can trust this process that's older than thought, older than worry, older than the very concept of time itself. Your body has carried you through thousands of nights, and it will carry you through this one too, in its own time, in its own way, with a wisdom that doesn't need your conscious assistance. As we drift even deeper into the night's embrace, let's explore something that happens in the space behind your closed eyelids. Your eyes themselves are helping prepare you for sleep through tiny, involuntary movements. Even when your eyelids are closed and you're lying still, your eyes continue to make small adjustments, little drifts and corrections. These are called ocular drift and microsaccades, tiny movements that happen constantly during waking consciousness. But as you relax more deeply, these movements begin to change in character. They become slower, less frequent, more random. This is one of the first measurable signs that sleep is approaching, something researchers can detect on an electrooculogram before the person themselves realizes they're falling asleep. Your eyes know before you do. They're already beginning their slow surrender. And then there's the phenomenon of slow rolling eye movements, which occur specifically in that drowsy state between waking and sleeping. Unlike the rapid, darting movements your eyes make when you're alert, or the rapid movements during REM sleep, these are gentle, wandering motions. Your eyes slowly rolling upward and outward, moving without purpose or direction, as if they're exploring the darkness behind your eyelids with only the vaguest curiosity. You might be able to feel this happening right now, or perhaps it's already happening without your awareness. These slow rolls are a beautiful sign, a signal that your brain's arousal systems are powering down, that the tight control you maintain over your eye movements during waking is finally relaxing. Let's talk about something called sensory attenuation, which is the brain's way of gradually turning down the volume on the external world. Throughout the day, your brain has been busy processing a constant flood of sensory information: sights, sounds, touches, smells, tastes. It's been working hard to determine what's important, what needs attention, what can be safely ignored. But now, as you lie in the darkness, your brain begins to care less and less about what's happening outside of you. The threshold for what counts as interesting or important gradually rises. A sound that might have captured your attention earlier, a car door closing, a voice in the distance, now barely registers. It's not that you can't hear it. It's that your brain has decided it doesn't matter. This is a protective mechanism, a way of creating a buffer between you and the world so that sleep can happen undisturbed. There's something deeply peaceful about this gradual withdrawal. It's as if you're slowly pulling away from the shore, drifting out into deeper, darker waters where the concerns of the day can't quite reach you anymore. The problems that felt so urgent a few hours ago, they're still there technically, but they feel distant now, muted, like voices heard through thick walls. This isn't denial or avoidance. It's your brain's natural process of deprioritizing waking concerns so that the important work of sleep can begin. Part of what's enabling this withdrawal is a shift in your thalamus, a structure deep in your brain that acts as a relay station for sensory information. During waking consciousness, your thalamus is actively engaged, passing sensory signals up to your cortex for processing and interpretation. But as you approach sleep, the thalamus begins to change its function, acting less like a relay and more like a gate. It starts blocking sensory information from reaching your conscious awareness, essentially disconnecting your cortex from the outside world. This is why you can sleep through routine sounds. Your thalamus is filtering them out, deciding they don't warrant waking you. Right now, in this drowsy state, your thalamus is beginning this filtering process, gradually turning down the volume on reality itself. Here's something fascinating about the transition into sleep. It doesn't happen all at once across your entire brain. Different regions fall asleep at different times, like lights going out in a city as evening deepens. A few here, a few there, until finally the whole landscape is dark. Some parts of your cortex might enter sleep-like states, while others remain relatively active. This is why the boundary between waking and sleeping is so fuzzy, so hard to pinpoint. There isn't really a single moment when you fall asleep. It's more like a gradual dimming, a progressive softening, a slow fade rather than a hard cut. Let's consider the role of expectation in your experience of time right now. When you expect something to take a long time, it usually does, not because the clock moves differently, but because your attention to duration makes it feel longer. Conversely, when you have no expectations about duration, time becomes almost irrelevant. Children experience this naturally. A child absorbed in play has no sense of time passing. Hours can go by unmarked and unmeasured. You can access this same quality of timelessness by releasing your expectations about when sleep should come, how long this should take, what should be happening by now. The moment you let go of should, time loses much of its heaviness. Your brain is also producing something wonderful right now: theta waves, which oscillate at about 4 to 8 cycles per second. These are slower than the alpha waves of relaxed wakefulness, and they're associated with deep relaxation, meditation, and the early stages of sleep. Theta is the rhythm of the subconscious, of intuition, of the dreamlike state. When theta waves become dominant in your brain, the usual boundaries of self and world, past and future, real and imagined, all of these boundaries become more permeable, more fluid. You might find yourself having thoughts that don't seem to come from anywhere, images appearing without you deliberately conjuring them, feelings arising without clear causes. This is theta consciousness, and it's a sign you're moving in the right direction, deeper into the night's mystery. There's a beautiful concept in sleep science called sleep pressure, which is simply the biological need for sleep building up over time. From the moment you wake up in the morning, sleep pressure begins to accumulate. Hour by hour, it grows stronger, creating an increasing motivation to rest. This pressure is what makes your eyelids feel heavy, what makes your thoughts slow, what makes the idea of lying down feel so appealing. Right now, after all the hours you've been awake, your sleep pressure is quite high. It's a gentle, insistent force like gravity pulling you down toward rest. You don't have to create this pressure or maintain it. It's already there, already working on your behalf. All you need to do is stop resisting it. And resistance, when you think about it, is really just another form of effort. Trying to stay awake requires effort, but so does trying to fall asleep. The sweet spot, the place where sleep actually happens, is in the absence of both kinds of effort. It's in the space of allowing, of surrender, of simply being present with whatever is. When you stop trying to make anything happen and stop trying to prevent anything from happening, You create a kind of stillness that sleep naturally fills, the way water naturally fills a container. Let's talk about something called the psychophysiological loop, which is particularly relevant to how we experience time at night. This loop works like this. When you notice that you're still awake and start to worry about it, that worry triggers a stress response in your body. Your heart rate might increase slightly. Stress hormones like cortisol get released in small amounts. Your muscles tense. These physical changes then feed back to your brain, providing evidence that, yes, something is wrong, which creates more worry, which creates more physical arousal, round and round. And all of this makes time feel slower because you're creating more mental events, more timestamps, more moments of, I'm still awake, I'm still awake. The way out of this loop is surprisingly simple. Stop checking whether you're asleep yet. Stop monitoring your state. Stop evaluating whether this is working. Just be here, in this moment, with no agenda whatsoever. Your body temperature has continued to drop as the night has progressed. This cooling isn't just coincident with sleep. It's actually necessary for sleep. Your core temperature needs to fall by 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit for sleep to occur, and this cooling triggers a cascade of other sleep-promoting changes throughout your body. The cooling itself is controlled by your circadian clock, which signals your blood vessels to dilate, especially in your hands and feet, allowing heat to escape from your core. This is why people often stick a foot out from under the covers when they're trying to sleep. They're unconsciously helping their body cool down. And as your temperature drops, so does your metabolic rate, your heart rate, your breathing rate. Everything slows. Everything quiets. Everything settles into the deeper, slower rhythms of night. There's also something happening with your blood pressure. Throughout the night, blood pressure naturally decreases in what's called a dipping pattern. During sleep, your blood pressure typically drops by 10 to 20%, giving your cardiovascular system a much-needed rest. But even before sleep fully arrives, as you lie here in the darkness, your blood pressure is already beginning to decrease. Your heart doesn't have to work as hard when you're lying down and relaxed. Each beat is easier, more efficient. The pressure in your arteries softens. Blood flows more gently through your body. This is part of the overall parasympathetic response, your rest and digest system taking over from your fight or flight system. The parasympathetic nervous system, controlled largely by the vagus nerve, is your body's brake pedal. While the sympathetic nervous system accelerates things, speeds up your heart, heightens alertness, prepares you for action, the parasympathetic system does the opposite. It slows your heart rate, promotes digestion, encourages rest and recovery. Right now, your vagus nerve is becoming increasingly active, sending signals throughout your body that essentially say, stand down, relax, there's no emergency, no threat, no need for vigilance. And as these signals propagate through your system, time itself seems to slow down because your body's internal tempo is slowing down. One more beautiful detail about this process: your brain produces more delta waves as sleep approaches. Delta waves are the slowest brain waves, pulsing at less than 4 cycles per second. They're the signature of deep, dreamless sleep. But they don't suddenly appear. They gradually increase in amplitude as you drift from wakefulness towards sleep. Right now, even if you feel awake, there are probably some delta waves beginning to appear in your brain's electrical symphony. Quiet notes in the lower registers, barely noticeable at first, but slowly growing stronger. So rest here in this knowledge. Everything that needs to happen is happening. Your brain waves are slowing. Your temperature is dropping. Your muscles are releasing. Your breath is deepening. Your sense of time is stretching and softening. You're not failing at sleep. You're succeeding at this moment, this slow, gentle, timeless moment. And that's all you ever need to do. Succeed at being exactly where you are, exactly as you are, with nothing to fix and nothing to change. As we continue our gentle drift through the night, let's explore something subtle but profound. The way silence itself has texture and depth when you truly listen to it. What we call silence isn't really the absence of sound. It's a rich tapestry of quiet sounds that exist just at the edge of perception. The faint hum of electricity in the walls. The nearly imperceptible sound of your own circulation. Blood moving through vessels near your ears. The soft whisper of air moving in and out of your lungs. When you tune into these almost silent sounds, something interesting happens to your perception of time. Because these sounds are so constant, so unchanging, they create a kind of temporal anchor, a steady background against which nothing much seems to happen. And when nothing much is happening, time loses its urgency, its forward momentum. It becomes more like a still pool than a flowing river. There's a concept in physics called the arrow of time, which refers to the fact that time seems to move in only one direction, from past to future. Entropy increases, eggs break, but don't unbreak. We remember yesterday, but not tomorrow. But in your subjective experience right now, the arrow of time might be becoming less distinct. Thoughts arise without clear temporal order. You might remember something from years ago with the same vividness as something from this morning. The future feels vague and unimportant. The past feels distant. There's mainly just this breath, this darkness, this soft present moment that doesn't seem to be going anywhere in particular. This is one of the gifts of the drowsy state. Time stops feeling like something you're moving through and starts feeling like something you're simply floating in. Let's consider what's happening with your sense of effort and will. During the day, you make hundreds of decisions, exert your will on the world, direct your attention deliberately from one thing to another. This constant exercise of volition requires energy. Mental energy drawn from your brain's limited reserves. But as those reserves deplete over the course of the day, your capacity for willful action naturally diminishes. This is called ego depletion in psychology, and while the concept is debated, the subjective experience is familiar to everyone. By nighttime, it's harder to make decisions, harder to resist temptations, harder to force yourself to do things you don't feel like doing. But this depletion, this reduction in willpower, is actually helpful for sleep. Sleep requires the opposite of will. It requires surrender, release, the cessation of doing. Your depleted state makes surrender easier, more natural, almost inevitable. There's something called microsleep, which you may be experiencing right now without fully realizing it. Microsleeps are brief episodes lasting anywhere from a fraction of a second to 30 seconds, where you essentially lose consciousness, then return. When microsleeps happen while you're lying in bed, they're usually completely unnoticeable to you. You might not even realize that consciousness briefly stopped. Time simply vanishes for a moment, and then you're back, with no memory of the gap. But these microsleeps are important. They're trial runs, your brain practicing the act of letting go, rehearsing the release of consciousness. Each microsleep makes the next one a little easier, a little longer, until eventually they merge into continuous sleep. Your immune system is intimately connected to your sleep-wake cycle. During sleep, your body produces cytokines, which are proteins that help fight infection and inflammation. But even before sleep fully arrives, as you rest in the darkness, your immune system begins to shift into its nighttime mode, ramping up production of these protective molecules. This is part of why sleep is so crucial for healing, for recovery from illness. But it's also why, when you're lying here resting, even if you're not fully asleep yet, you're still giving your body the opportunity to do some of its nighttime repair work. The time isn't wasted. The stillness itself has value, independent of whether sleep comes quickly or slowly. Let's talk about something called temporal discounting, which is the tendency to value immediate rewards more than future rewards. During the day, you're constantly making decisions based on future consequences. I should do this now so that later will be better. But as you become drowsy, your brain's ability to engage in this kind of future-oriented thinking diminishes. The future becomes hazier, less real, less motivating. And while this might sound like a problem, in the context of falling asleep, it's actually helpful because it means you stop trying to optimize for tomorrow. You stop thinking, I need to fall asleep, so I'll be rested for tomorrow's meeting. The meeting stops feeling real or important. There's only now, only this moment, and the pressure to sleep for the sake of the future dissolves, ironically making sleep itself more accessible. Your sense of self is also changing in subtle ways. During ordinary waking consciousness, you maintain a strong, continuous sense of being you, a unified agent moving through time with specific characteristics, memories, goals, and identity. But as you drift towards sleep, this sense of self becomes more diffuse, more permeable. The boundaries of who you are seem less important, less rigid. You might notice that the constant internal narrator, the voice that comments on everything, that maintains the story of you, is speaking less frequently, or its voice is becoming quieter, easier to ignore. This dissolution of self is another necessary precondition for sleep. Sleep happens in the absence of the ego, in the space where you temporarily cease to exist as a definite thing. There's a meditation practice from Buddhist traditions that's deeply relevant here, the practice of letting go of the controller. The idea is that much of our suffering comes from the illusion that we're controlling our experience, controlling our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations. But the reality is that most of what happens in consciousness happens automatically, without any you directing it. Thoughts arise on their own. Emotions come and go. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your stomach digests. Right now, you can notice this. You're not making sleep happen, and you're not preventing it from happening. It's simply unfolding according to its own timing, its own logic, completely independent of your will or wishes. And recognizing this, really feeling it, can bring tremendous relief. You can stop trying to control what was never under your control to begin with. Let's explore something called the frequency-following response, where your brain's electrical activity tends to synchronize with rhythmic stimuli in the environment. This is why rhythmic sounds like ocean waves, steady rain, or white noise can promote sleep. Your brain begins to entrain to these rhythms, and in doing so, its own activity becomes more regular and slower. But there's also an internal version of this. Your brain can entrain to the rhythm of your own breath. As your breathing slows and becomes more regular, your brain waves tend to synchronize with that rhythm, taking on a slower, more regular pattern themselves. This is one reason why mindful breathing is such a powerful tool for relaxation. You're essentially using your breath as a metronome to slow down your brain. Your dreaming mind may already be starting to wake up, even as your waking mind is falling asleep. This creates the strange, liminal experience of hypnagogic imagery, fleeting images, scenes, or narratives that appear in your mind's eye without you deliberately creating them. You might see faces of people you don't recognize, places you've never been, situations that don't make logical sense. These aren't quite dreams yet, but they're not waking thoughts either. They're spontaneous productions of your visual cortex and association areas, beginning to generate content in the same way they will during actual dreams. Rather than trying to control or understand these images, you can simply watch them drift by, like clouds passing across an inner sky. Each image is a sign that the dream-generating machinery of your brain is powering up, preparing for the night's work. There's something deeply ancient and universal about the experience you're having right now. Every human being who has ever lived has done this, lain in darkness, felt time slow down, drifted between waking and sleeping. Thousands of years ago, your distant ancestors lay on the ground or in caves, experiencing this same transition, this same softening of consciousness. This is one of the fundamental human experiences, as basic as eating or breathing. And there's something comforting in that universality, isn't there? You're not alone in this experience, even though you might be alone in this room. You're connected to every sleeping person across the world right now, and to every person throughout history who has ever surrendered to the night. The darkness around you isn't empty. It's full of this connection, full of the shared human experience of rest. And you're being held by that, supported by the knowledge that your body knows exactly what to do, because it's been doing this for as long as there have been bodies, as long as there has been day and night, as long as there has been the need for consciousness to periodically release its grip and dissolve into dreamless rest. Your jaw might be relaxing now, if it hasn't already. The jaw is a place where many people unconsciously hold tension. Throughout the day, you might have been clenching slightly without even realizing it, holding stress in the muscles of your face and jaw. But now those muscles can finally let go. Your teeth can part slightly. Your tongue can rest soft and heavy in your mouth. And as your jaw releases, it sends a signal to your brain that effort is no longer needed, that holding on is no longer necessary. Time has become something different now, not a series of discrete moments anymore, but more like a continuous flow, an endless present that doesn't seem to be going anywhere because there's nowhere it needs to go. You're not waiting for sleep anymore. You're not trying to get somewhere else. You're simply here, floating in this timeless space, held by the darkness, supported by the night, exactly where you need to be. As we float deeper still into the night's gentle embrace, let's explore something remarkable about consciousness itself. The way attention can exist without effort. Right now, you might be aware of these words, or you might be drifting in and out of awareness, and both states are perfectly fine. Attention doesn't have to be forced or maintained. It can simply rest gently on whatever is present, the way light falls on objects without trying, without strain. When you let attention be effortless, when you stop trying to focus or concentrate, time loses even more of its structure. There's just awareness itself, soft and open, not directed at anything in particular, not trying to accomplish anything. Let's consider what happens to your sense of location and spatial awareness as you sink deeper into relaxation. During the day, you always know where you are in space. You're here, and other things are there, and there are measurable distances between you and them. But as you drift towards sleep, this spatial certainty begins to blur. Your body might feel like it's sinking into the mattress, or perhaps rising slightly above it. The boundaries between your body and the bed, between the bed and the room, might feel less distinct. Some people describe feeling like they're floating or spinning slowly, or expanding to fill the space around them. These spatial distortions are signs that your parietal lobe, the part of your brain that constructs your sense of physical space, is beginning to power down for the night. And as spatial awareness fades, so does another marker by which we usually measure time. Without clear spatial reference points, duration becomes even more ambiguous, even more fluid. There's a beautiful paradox at the heart of sleep. You can't fall asleep while you're trying to observe whether you're falling asleep. The very act of monitoring your state keeps you in a state that's sufficiently conscious to do the monitoring. It's like trying to watch the exact moment you lose consciousness. By definition, if you're watching, you haven't lost consciousness yet. This is why sleep so often arrives when we finally stop caring whether it arrives or not. When attention finally releases its grip on the question, "Am I asleep yet?" That's precisely when sleep can slip in through the unguarded door. So any moment you notice you're not trying anymore, not checking anymore, that's a moment of profound progress, even if it doesn't feel like anything special. Your body has its own intelligence about sleep, separate from your conscious mind. There are clusters of neurons in your brainstem and hypothalamus that are specifically designed to initiate and maintain sleep. These sleep-promoting neurons become increasingly active as the night progresses, releasing neurotransmitters that essentially shut down the wake-promoting systems. This is happening right now automatically, without any input from your conscious awareness. Your brain is having a conversation with itself, and the sleep-promoting side is gradually winning the argument. You don't have to participate in this conversation. You don't even have to know it's happening. It's as automatic as digestion, as involuntary as your heartbeat. Let's talk about something called perceptual decoupling, which is when your awareness begins to disconnect from sensory input and drift into internal mental content. During normal waking consciousness, your attention is mostly oriented outward. You're aware of sights, sounds, physical sensations. But as you approach sleep, your awareness begins to turn inward, becoming more focused on thoughts, images, and sensations that are internally generated rather than coming from the external world. You might notice this happening. The feeling of the sheets becomes less important than a random thought about something from last week. The sound of the room fades into the background as an image appears in your mind. This inward turning is essential for dreaming to begin, and it's already starting, even now, even before full sleep arrives. There's something worth understanding about the relationship between body position and sleep. The position you're lying in right now is communicating something to your brain. Lying down horizontally is itself a signal that sleep should occur. Blood pressure adjusts, inner ear sensations change, the distribution of weight across your body shifts. Your brain has learned over a lifetime that this position is associated with sleep, and simply being in this position triggers sleep-promoting mechanisms. This is part of why it's so much harder to fall asleep sitting up. The position itself is telling your brain a different story, suggesting that wakefulness is still required. But here, now, lying down in the darkness, your position is sending clear signals. It's safe to let go, safe to stop monitoring the environment, safe to sleep. Your circadian system is releasing a cascade of sleep signals right now. Deep in your brain, The suprachiasmatic nucleus has registered the prolonged absence of light and has been coordinating a symphony of changes throughout your body. Your pineal gland has been releasing melatonin for hours. Your core temperature has dropped. Your cortisol, which peaks in the morning, has fallen to its lowest levels. Even your genes are expressing themselves differently at night than during the day. Literally, different genes are being turned on and off based on the time. You are, at a molecular level, a different organism at night than you are during the day. And this nighttime version of you is exquisitely designed for one thing: sleep. Let's explore the concept of cognitive load and how it affects sleep onset. Cognitive load refers to how much mental work you're doing, how many things you're trying to think about or process simultaneously. When cognitive load is high, sleep is difficult or impossible because your working memory and executive functions are fully engaged. But as you lie here in the darkness, there's very little cognitive load. You're not trying to solve problems, not planning tomorrow, not reviewing the day. And in this low-load state, the systems that maintain wakefulness have very little to do, very little justification for remaining active. They begin to idle, then to dim, then eventually to switch off entirely. The less you think about, the easier it is for these systems to release their hold. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called neural noise, which is random, spontaneous activity in the brain. During waking consciousness, your brain suppresses this noise fairly effectively, maintaining clear, coherent patterns of activity. But as you drift towards sleep, the suppression of neural noise decreases. Random patterns of activity begin to bubble up, creating the strange, unpredictable content of hypnagogic experiences. Random images, meaningless sounds, fragmentary thoughts that don't connect to anything. This increasing noise is actually a sign that your brain's top-down control is relaxing. The executive systems that usually maintain order and coherence are loosening their grip, allowing the brain to become more chaotic, more unpredictable, which paradoxically is exactly what needs to happen for sleep and dreams to emerge. Let's talk about white noise in your own nervous system. Your neurons are firing constantly, even at rest, creating a background hum of electrical activity throughout your brain. During waking consciousness, this background noise is relatively organized, kept in check by your brain's executive functions. But as you approach sleep, the organization decreases. The noise becomes louder, more random, more chaotic, but not in a distressing way. It's like static on a radio between stations, or the sound of rain on a roof, non-patterned, but somehow soothing. This neural noise is what gives rise to the strange, fragmentary quality of hypnagogic experiences. And immersing yourself in this internal static, rather than trying to find patterns or meaning in it, can help consciousness finally release its need for coherence and order. Your heart is doing something remarkable right now. Your heart rate variability, the variation in time between heartbeats, changes throughout the day and is highest during deep relaxation and sleep. A healthy, relaxed heart doesn't beat like a metronome. It has natural variation, speeding up and slowing down subtly in response to breathing and other bodily rhythms. Right now, your heart rate variability is likely increasing, which is a sign of parasympathetic nervous system dominance, the rest and digest state. You can't directly control this, but you can notice it if you pay attention. The way your heart doesn't beat in perfect mechanical rhythm, but dances slightly, playing with timing, speeding and slowing like a jazz musician playing with the beat. And this cardiac dance is another lullaby, another rhythm carrying you towards sleep. There's something called the Proteus effect, where external features change your internal state. But there's also an internal version. The positions and expressions you hold with your body shape your emotional and mental states. Right now, your body is in the posture of sleep, horizontal, relaxed, still. Your face has likely softened into a neutral or peaceful expression. And these physical states are sending signals to your brain. This is what we look like when we sleep, therefore sleep must be appropriate. Your body is teaching your mind how to be right now, and the lesson is simple: release, soften, let go. Time has become something almost abstract now, not a thing you're experiencing, but more like a concept you vaguely remember from earlier, when you were more awake. The boundary between past and future has become so thin as to be almost non-existent. There's just this endless now, stretching in all directions, without beginning or end. And you're floating in the center of it, or perhaps you are it. The distinction isn't clear anymore, and doesn't need to be. And so we arrive here, at this place beyond effort, beyond trying, beyond the need for anything to be different than it is. All night, your body has been preparing for this. Every system working in harmony, every process aligned toward a single purpose: rest. The adenosine accumulated, the melatonin released, the temperature dropped, the brain waves slowed. Not because you made these things happen, but because your body knows, has always known exactly what to do. The facts we've explored together weren't really about convincing you of anything, or teaching you to sleep. They were simply a way of keeping you company in the darkness, a gentle voice to drift alongside while your body did what it was always going to do. And now, even these words are becoming less important, less necessary. The information fades. The facts dissolve. Only the feeling remains, the softness, the heaviness, the deep, deep relaxation. Time doesn't feel slow anymore. It doesn't feel fast either. It barely feels like anything at all. Just this gentle presence, this quiet being, this breath moving in and out like waves on a shore you can barely remember. Your thoughts, if there are any left, are like clouds now, so light, so insubstantial, drifting across an empty sky and dissolving before they can fully form. And that's perfect. That's exactly right. Thoughts don't need to complete themselves. They don't need to mean anything. They can simply arise and fade, each one a little fainter than the last. The darkness around you isn't separate from you anymore. You're not in the darkness. You are the darkness, soft and boundless and at peace. There's no inside or outside, no here or there, no then or now. Just this vast, gentle presence, breathing, being, resting in itself. And you don't need to follow these words anymore. You don't need to understand them or remember them. They're already fading, becoming distant, like sounds heard from far away, across dark water, in the deep of night. Let them fade. Let everything fade. The body knows what to do. The night knows how to hold you. Sleep knows when to come. And it comes now or soon or already came. Time is too soft to tell the difference anymore. Rest now. Just rest. Everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep well. Your emotional state has also been shifting as the night progresses. During the day, emotions tend to be more intense, more reactive, more quickly triggered. But at night, especially as you approach sleep, there's often a kind of emotional flattening, where things that might normally provoke strong feelings seem less important, less urgent. This is partly due to reduced activity in your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain. As the amygdala's activity decreases, you become less emotionally reactive, more accepting of whatever is. Worries that seemed overwhelming earlier might now seem distant, abstract, not worth the energy of concern. This emotional quieting is another gift of the night, another way your brain prepares you for the vulnerability of sleep. Let's consider the role of expectation and prediction in consciousness. Your brain is constantly making predictions about what will happen next, what you'll see, hear, feel. These predictions are then compared to actual sensory input, and any mismatch between prediction and reality captures your attention. But as you drift towards sleep, your brain's predictive capacity diminishes. You stop anticipating what comes next. The future, even the immediate future of the next few seconds, becomes opaque, unknowable. And without predictions about what's coming, time loses its forward momentum. You're no longer moving toward anything. You're simply here in this unpredictable, unfolding present. There's something called the Tetris effect, named after the phenomenon where people who play Tetris intensely start to see Tetris shapes everywhere, even when not playing. More broadly, it refers to the way repeated activities throughout the day continue to echo in your mind as you fall asleep. You might notice images or thoughts related to what you did today, fragments of conversations, visual patterns, physical sensations. These are your brain's way of processing and consolidating the day's experiences. Rather than trying to stop these mental echoes, you can let them play out, watching them with gentle curiosity. Each echo that passes through is one more thing being processed, one more piece of the day being filed away, leaving your mind a little clearer, a little emptier, a little more ready for sleep. Your breath has its own wisdom too. Without you deliberately controlling it, your breathing has likely settled into a natural rhythm, smooth, slow, effortless. The pause at the end of each exhale might be growing slightly longer, a natural tendency as relaxation deepens. This pause, this moment of stillness between breaths, is a little preview of the larger stillness of sleep. A moment where nothing is happening, where the body rests in perfect suspension, neither taking in nor giving out, just being. And with each breath cycle, you have the opportunity to notice this pause, to rest in it, to let it expand slightly, naturally, without force. Time at this point might not even feel like time anymore. It might just feel like existence itself, pure, undifferentiated being, with no sense of duration, no awareness of whether this moment is long or short, early or late. And that's the threshold, isn't it? When time stops being something you experience and becomes something you simply are. Not moving through time, but resting in it, dissolving into it, becoming indistinguishable from it. As we drift through this ocean of darkness, let's explore something profound about the nature of awareness itself in these liminal spaces. Right now, you might notice that awareness has become softer, less defined. It's no longer the sharp, focused beam of attention you use during the day. It's more like a gentle glow, illuminating nothing in particular, resting on everything equally. This diffuse awareness is sometimes called open monitoring in meditation traditions, and it's particularly conducive to sleep because it requires no effort, no selection, no judgment about what should or shouldn't be present in your experience. Everything is allowed, everything is welcome, and in this complete acceptance, resistance dissolves, and with it, the tension that keeps you wakeful. Let's talk about something called sleep inertia, which is the grogginess you feel when you first wake up. But there's also a kind of reverse sleep inertia happening right now, a growing inertia toward wakefulness, where staying awake requires more and more effort, and consciousness itself begins to feel heavy, sticky, hard to maintain. Your thoughts are becoming more laborious. Completing a full train of thought feels like walking through deep water. This cognitive sluggishness isn't a problem, it's progress. It means your waking mind is exhausting itself, running out of fuel. And in that exhaustion, sleep finds its opening. There's something beautiful happening with your default mode network right now. We talked about this earlier. The network of brain regions that activates when you're not focused on external tasks, when your mind wanders freely. But as you sink deeper into drowsiness, even the default mode network begins to quiet down. The constant self-referential thinking, I am, I need, I should, starts to fade. The story of yourself, which your brain has been narrating continuously since you woke up this morning, finally begins to fall silent. And in that silence, there's tremendous peace. No story means no problems. No self means no worry about that self. Just this, breathing, being, existing without narrative or interpretation. Time was there before anything else existed. Before the first star ignited, before the first atom formed, time was already waiting, patient and eternal. Time is the oldest thing in the universe, and yet it never ages. It simply is always moving, always flowing, the great river that carries everything forward. Time is both the gentlest and the most powerful force you'll ever encounter. It can heal wounds that seem impossible to mend. Time heals all wounds, people say, and it's true. Not because time does anything active, but because time gives space. Space for cells to regenerate, for memories to soften, for hearts to find their way back to wholeness. Time is patient with your pain in a way that nothing else can be. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't judge how long you need. It simply continues, day after day, offering you another morning, another chance, another breath. But time is also uncompromising. You cannot bargain with time. You cannot save it, hoard it, or get it back once it's gone. People speak of spending time as if it were money, but time is far more precious than that. Money can be earned again, found again, borrowed again. But a moment passed is past forever. Time is the one resource that diminishes for everyone at exactly the same rate. Rich or poor, powerful or powerless, we all have 24 hours in a day, and those hours slip through our fingers like water, no matter how tightly we try to hold them. Time is a master teacher, perhaps the only teacher we truly need. Every lesson worth learning, time eventually teaches. The young person who thinks they know everything, time shows them their ignorance, gently, gradually, through experience. The person convinced their heartbreak will last forever, time proves them wrong, day by patient day. Time teaches humility to the proud, wisdom to the foolish, and compassion to the hardened. And time's lessons, unlike human lessons, cannot be avoided. You cannot skip time's class. You cannot graduate early. You're enrolled from birth until death, and every moment is both the curriculum and the test. There's a version of time that lives inside each of us. Our internal clock, our sense of duration, our feeling of moments passing. And this inner time is wonderfully, mysteriously flexible. Time can stretch or compress based on what we're experiencing. An hour of joy passes like minutes. A minute of pain stretches into hours. Time bends around our emotions, our attention, our states of consciousness. It's as if time is trying to teach us something important. That clock time, the mechanical ticking of seconds, isn't the only time that matters. What matters is lived time, felt time, experienced time, the quality of moments, not just their quantity. Time is also a great revealer of truth. Lies might work for a while, but time eventually exposes them. The truth will out, people say, and time is the mechanism by which this happens. Deceptions unravel. Facades crack. The real nature of people and situations eventually becomes clear, given enough time. This is why wise people say time will tell. Because time is the ultimate witness, the one who sees everything and eventually reveals what needs to be revealed. You cannot hide from time's scrutiny. It sees you when you're young and foolish, and it sees you when you're old and wise, and it knows, because it was there for every moment in between. But perhaps most importantly, time is the container in which love exists. Love without time is just a spark, bright but brief. But love given time becomes something else entirely. The love between partners deepens over decades. The love between parent and child grows and transforms through years of shared moments. Friendships seasoned by time become unbreakable. Time is what allows trust to build, understanding to deepen, bonds to strengthen. Every meaningful relationship in your life is a sculpture that you and another person create together, and time is the medium, the clay, the stone, the substance from which the sculpture is made. And time is merciful in this way. It gives us enough moments to find what matters. Even if you've wasted years, and everyone wastes some years, there are still moments ahead, still opportunities to love, to grow, to become who you were meant to be. Time forgives the past by constantly offering the future. Each morning is time saying, "Here, try again. Start fresh. I'm giving you another chance." Time also gives us the greatest gift, mortality. Yes, mortality. The fact that time will eventually run out for each of us. This sounds dark, but it's actually what makes life precious. If we had infinite time, nothing would matter. Every moment would be replaceable. Every relationship could be postponed forever. But because time is limited, because we don't know how much of it we have, each moment becomes valuable simply by being unrepeatable. This conversation, this breath, this now, it will never come again. Time's scarcity is what creates meaning, urgency, and beauty. So as you lie here in the darkness, you're not fighting against time anymore. You're not worried about how much time has passed or how much time until morning. You're simply resting in time, letting it carry you forward the way a river carries a leaf. Effortlessly, naturally, inevitably. Time will bring the morning. Time will bring tomorrow. Time will bring whatever comes next. But right now, in this eternal moment, time is simply holding you, the way it's held everything that's ever existed. Gently, completely, without judgment or demand. And that's enough. Time is enough. This moment is enough. You are enough. Your vision, even with your eyes closed, has been changing throughout this journey. The darkness behind your eyelids might have shifted in quality, sometimes lighter, sometimes darker, sometimes filled with subtle patterns or colors. These variations reflect changes in your brain's visual cortex, which continues to generate activity even in the absence of visual input. But as sleep approaches, even this spontaneous activity begins to change character. The patterns become less organized, more chaotic, more dreamlike. You might see brief flashes of imagery that appear and dissolve before you can quite grasp what they were. These are fragments of dreams beginning to surface, like fish occasionally breaking the surface of a deep, dark pool. Let's consider the role of memory consolidation in making you feel sleepy. Throughout the day, you've accumulated thousands of memories, some important, most trivial. Your brain has been working hard to tag these memories, to decide which ones are worth keeping and which can be discarded. But this sorting process is energetically expensive, and by now, your brain's capacity to do this work is depleted. There's a cognitive traffic jam forming. Too much information waiting to be processed, not enough mental energy to process it. Sleep is the solution to this problem. During sleep, especially during the deeper stages, your brain will efficiently sort through today's experiences, consolidating what matters and clearing out what doesn't. And the need for this consolidation creates a kind of pressure, a heaviness in your thinking, that makes continued wakefulness feel increasingly difficult and unappealing. There's a concept from chronobiology called process C and process S, which are the two main processes regulating sleep. Process C is your circadian rhythm, the roughly 24-hour cycle we've discussed. Process S is sleep pressure, the biological drive for sleep that builds the longer you're awake. Right now, both processes are aligned, both pushing in the same direction. Your circadian system is saying it's nighttime, sleep should happen. And your sleep pressure is saying you've been awake long enough, sleep is needed. When these two processes are synchronized and both at high levels, sleep becomes almost inevitable. It's not a matter of if, but when. And the when takes care of itself. You don't have to schedule it, plan it, or make it happen. It simply arrives when the conditions are right, and the conditions are becoming righter with each passing moment. Your muscles have entered what's called muscle hypotonia, a decrease in muscle tone that happens naturally as you relax. Your muscles aren't completely limp yet. That comes during actual REM sleep with full autonia. But they're significantly more relaxed than they were hours ago. Each muscle fiber has released stored tension, lengthened, softened. And this physical softening mirrors and reinforces mental softening. Your soft body tells your brain that vigilance is unnecessary, that you're safe, that letting go is appropriate. This is the body-mind loop working in your favor, each aspect supporting the other's movement toward rest. Let's explore something called semantic satiation, which is when a word or concept loses its meaning through repetition. You've probably experienced this. Say a word over and over, and it starts to sound strange, alien, meaningless. Something similar can happen with thoughts as you approach sleep. A worry that seemed significant earlier gets thought about again and again, and gradually it loses its emotional charge, its sense of urgency, its meaning. It becomes just words, just abstract symbols, disconnected from any real concern. This is your brain's natural way of diffusing anxious thoughts. Through repetition, they exhaust themselves, become boring, lose their power to keep you awake. There's a fascinating relationship between sleep and creativity that's relevant to this moment. Many creative breakthroughs happen at the boundary between waking and sleeping, in this very state you're in right now. The loosening of logical constraints, the increased randomness of thought associations, the blending of usually separate concepts. All of this creates conditions where novel insights can emerge. You might notice ideas arising that seem to come from nowhere, connections between things you've never connected before. These aren't interruptions or distractions from sleep. They're part of the journey toward it, your mind exploring new territories as the usual pathways and guardrails dissolve. And often, after these creative sparks flicker through, The mind settles even more deeply, having discharged some of its remaining energy. Your sense of agency, the feeling that you are doing things, making things happen, is probably quite diminished by now. During the day, you feel like the author of your actions, the originator of your thoughts. But as you sink deeper, it becomes increasingly clear that thoughts arise by themselves, that breath happens by itself, that everything is simply unfolding without any you making it unfold. This recognition doesn't have to be frightening or disorienting. It can be profoundly relaxing, the realization that you don't have to do anything, that the universe is proceeding perfectly well without your management or control. Sleep happens when the illusion of agency finally releases, when you stop trying to be the one who falls asleep and simply allow sleep to happen to you, through you, as you.